Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the most incredible, always-on defense force you could possibly imagine, your very own immune system. Think of it like an invisible army, constantly at war, all to keep you safe.
Seriously, have you ever just stopped and thought about that? Right now, as you're sitting there, this unbelievably complex battle is raging inside your body. So you know what? Let's meet the soldiers fighting for you.
Okay, so your immune army isn't just one big mob. It's actually split into two main divisions. First up is the innate system. These are your first responders, the general-purpose soldiers. They show up fast and attack anything that looks like it doesn't belong. Then you've got the adaptive system. Now these are the special forces. They're a little slower to get going, but they develop super-specific weapons and, this is the key, they never forget an enemy.
So, let's start where any fight starts, right at the front line. And there, we meet a group of soldiers called phagocytes. These guys are the absolute first responders of your innate immune system.
Now, these frontline troops aren't all the same. You've got your neutrophils, they're the most common, and they just swarm any site of infection. Then you have macrophages, and their name literally means big eaters. They gobble up invaders and clean up all the debris. And then there are the dendritic cells. Think of them as the intelligence officers. They capture an enemy, and then they carry that intel back to headquarters to get the adaptive army fired up. And here's something kind of wild to think about next time you see a cut that's healing. That pus? Yeah, that's basically a battlefield graveyard filled with heroic neutrophils that literally fought to the death for you. It's a visible reminder that your army is hard at work. So, how do they actually eat a pathogen? Well, it's this awesome process called phagocytosis. First, they have to recognize the bad guy and grab onto it. Then, they completely engulf it, pulling it inside. After that, they just blast it with powerful enzymes and digest it. But here's the truly brilliant part. The final step, they take a little piece of that destroyed pathogen, it's called an antigen, and they display it on their own surface. It's like they're holding up the enemy's flag for everyone else to see.
And that alert, that flag waving, brings us to the command center of the whole adaptive immune system, the T cells. These are your highly trained coordinators, your special forces. What makes T cells so special is that they don't fight enemies just floating around in your blood. Nope, they are masters of cell-to-cell combat. That means they hunt down your own body's cells that have been hijacked by viruses or have become cancerous. They're like internal affairs, going door to door, checking for any signs of trouble inside.
And inside this command center, you've got two main players. First are the helper T cells. You can think of them as the commanders. They don't do the killing themselves, but they get the intel from the phagocytes and then start barking out orders, these chemical messages called cytokines. It's like they're the generals coordinating the entire battle. And then you have the cytotoxic T cells. These are the assassins. Once the helper T cells give them the green light, they go out and hunt down and destroy any infected body cells, stopping viruses dead in their tracks.
So that's one half of the special forces. Now let's move over to the other major branch of the adaptive army. It's time to meet the B cells, the weapons specialists.
So while T cells are busy dealing with compromised cells, B cells are focused on pathogens that are just free-floating in your body fluids, like your blood. Their entire job is to become these little factories that pump out millions of incredible Y-shaped proteins called antibodies, and each one is custom-made to lock on to one specific kind of invader.
But a B cell can't just start blasting away on its own. That would be way too dangerous. It's a two-step verification process. First, it has to physically bind to a pathogen that it recognizes. But that's not enough. For the second step, it needs a confirmation signal from an activated helper T cell. It's a brilliant failsafe to prevent friendly fire. Once it gets that go order, it starts cloning itself into an army of what are called plasma cells, and they just churn out antibodies.
So what do these little antibody weapons do? They're amazingly versatile. For one, they can neutralize a virus, basically covering it so it can't get into your cells. They can also opsonize a bacteria, which is a fancy way of saying they paint a giant target on it, making it look extra tasty for those phagocytes. They can trigger this chain reaction of other proteins to literally punch holes in a pathogen. And they can cause agglutination, which is just clumping all the invaders together into one big, easy-to-clean-up mess.
Okay, so let's put it all together. How does this whole army work in concert to achieve victory? And maybe more importantly, how does it create a lasting defense for the future?
All right, here's the full play-by-play of the battle. Step 1, a phagocyte eats a bad guy and shows off a piece of it. Step 2, a helper T cell sees that piece and sounds the alarm, becoming activated. Step 3, That T cell then activates B cells to start making antibodies and cytotoxic T cells to start hunting infected cells. Step 4, this 1-2 punch of antibodies and cell assassins wipes out the infection. And then, step 5, some of those activated T and B cells stick around, becoming memory cells.
And this is the absolute genius of the adaptive system. These memory cells hang around for years, sometimes your whole life. So if that same pathogen ever tries to invade again, your army is ready. The response is so fast and so overwhelming, you probably won't even know you were sick. And by the way, this is the exact principle of how vaccines work. They introduce a safe piece of the enemy just so your body can create these memory cells without you having to get sick first.
So, let's do a final roll call of our immune army, just to lock it all in. We've got the innate phagocytes as our first responders. Then, in the adaptive system, we've got the helper T cells as the commanders, the cytotoxic T cells as the assassins, and the B cells as our antibody weapons factories. Each one has its own critical job, but they all work together to keep you healthy.
When you think about it, the level of coordination is it's breathtakingly brilliant. Which really leads to one last fascinating question. If this system is so good at telling the difference between you and an invader, why does it sometimes get it wrong and attack the body's own cells? Causing autoimmune diseases. Well, that's a story for another time.